Here we go. Welcome to our Thursday book launch. My name is Malika Albrecht, and I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. And tonight I am super excited because this is someone who I call my poetry brother. And Scott Owens has a lot to do with a lot of us writers getting published or being encouraged by him. And I owe a debt, Scott, because it was probably 12, 13 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 14, that I sent you a manuscript and I said, help, I'm struggling with this. And you said, I actually think this could be published. And you sent it to Scott Douglas at Main Street Rag, and that was Lessons in Forgetting.
Which is a fantastic book.
Yeah. But, you have, not only are you a prolific writer, 18 books out. We're celebrating. I mean, we could celebrate multiple ones. We're just celebrating one, and you already have two lined up. But you are one of the most generous, humble poets, human beings, and we're very fortunate to have you in our community. So I really want to take a moment just to say thank you, Scott.
Oh, thank you. That was a great introduction.
Well, I am going to read a bit of your bio.
Okay.
Scott Owens is the author of 18 books, 18 poetry collections, including The Fractured World, For One Who Knows How to Own Land, and Shadows That Trail Them. His newest collection, Prepositional, was published by Redhawk in November 2022. His work has garnered awards from Academy of American Poets, the Pushcart Prize Anthology, Next Generation Indie Lit Awards, and North Carolina Writers Network, of course, the North Carolina Poetry Society, and Poetry Society of South Carolina. He has been featured on the Writers Almanac 7 times, and his articles have appeared frequently in Poets Market. After spending his childhood in mill villages and on his grandparents' small farm in Greenwood, South Carolina, Owens earned degrees from Ohio University, UNC Charlotte, and also UNC Greensboro. He is a professor of poetry at Lenore Rhine University. It's also, if you are anywhere near Hickory, you do want to go to Tasteful of Beans Coffee House and Gallery. And it sounds like it's gotten even more fantastic since I have been there. I'll have to head back in that direction at some point. Scott, I'm coming to you and I'm going to spotlight you. And just a reminder, we're all going to mute. Thank you so much, Scott.
Well, thank you. And welcome everyone to my sick room, and please forgive my voice if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And I probably look like I've been sick because I have been, so overlook that as well, if you will. So this is the new book, Prepositional, and people want to know where the title came from and how I decided to write a book on that. And it's really just because over the years I've written so many poems that focus on prepositions, and those that didn't specifically focus on prepositions, I think they were always about relationships. To me, I guess it kind of goes back to Frost and the promises to keep, miles to go before I sleep. Those promises to keep imply relationships, relationships to people, relationships to the world that we live in, relationships to what we do, relationships to what we believe. And so that seems to kind of sum up my work. And this is a selected works, although Tim Peeler, one of the people who wrote some nice things on it for me, pointed out that there are more new poems than selected poems. And wasn't intentional, it just kind of happened that way, but I'm kind of happy with that accident. So so many of these poems you may have read before or heard before if you have any of my previous books. And I will say, to clarify, these are the selected upbeat poems, and I'm just in the last few years I'm in an upbeat mood. In fact, last year I wrote something I never thought I would do. I'll just hold this up. wrote a book of poems for children, and it was illustrated by a local artist. So that was a great deal of fun and kind of continued in my upbeat mood. I do have in mind a selected works of the dark poems as well, because I have plenty of new ones that I need to collect somewhere, and they'll have more context if I can pull some of the old negative ones as well. But anyway, we'll stick to upbeat for tonight, and I'll start with one that talks about a relationship with a very important person in my life, if you will. Well, actually, in a sense, three very important people: my wife, my daughter, and my mother's father. Speaking of the negative poems, if you know anything about my childhood, it was not a good one. And I frequently say that there was only one man in my childhood that I had any respect for, and that was my mother's father. And he figures into this poem. Excuse the coughing. With them, just a boy, not yet 8, and knowing nothing of the world, I simply did as I was told, and reached my hands, my forearms long and thin, even up to the elbows, into the bloody back end of a moaning cow, to grasp what I felt there and pull harder when it wouldn't come, until something appeared, and pull harder still until something became a wet mess of calf spilling into my lap, and my uncles laughing, and my grandfather, his hand on my shoulder, looking at me hard, eyes full of seriousness, saying, "Good job, good job." A lifetime later, at 41, holding you, I finally understand the weight of it all. I look at your mother spent in bed and say, "Good job," and then into your own uncomprehending, just born eyes and say again, "Good job." So the next poem is about relationships, or a relationship to what we do, to what most of us who are here tonight specifically do. The poem actually started and interestingly enough, the book of children's poems started when I was teaching a workshop at my daughter's elementary school when she was in 2nd grade. All of the students were 2nd and 3rd graders, but they took to poetry so quickly that it was just wonderful, and it led me to write some poems for them. And so this poem came out of my first day there. I arrived early, as I always do, and the most wonderful little girl came up to me as I was standing staring out the window and asked me what I was looking at. And I gave her some pat answer to, get her to go back with the group that she was supposed to be with, because I didn't want her to get into trouble. But my mind immediately started running through the real answer to that question, and it led to this poem. It's called Of. Poetry is contrary to productivity. Poetry encourages idleness. Poetry stands at the window because it is curious about the flowers. This flower with its yellow fringed face around its one brown eye. Poetry stands at the window because it is curious about the trees. This tree with heart-shaped leaves, some turning yellow in the first days of fall, some fallen off, and still the limbs reaching up to the sky. Poetry stands at the window because it is curious about the sky, how it got there, where it goes, what it's like where it ends. Poetry wants the window down. Poetry walks back and forth through a field going nowhere. Poetry thinks it's okay to look at the same sky day after day, sometimes minutes at a time, sometimes with no other purpose than remembering blue. Poetry refuses to follow the rules of efficiency, get in line, speak only when spoken to, never say anything that would embarrass your mother. The first poem ever written was a drum. The first poem ever written was a foot tapping on the side of the crib. The first poem ever written was a rope slapping the red clay playground of William Blake Elementary School. It is not necessary for poetry to be beautiful, though it sometimes is. It is not required of poetry that it be profound, though it rarely closes its eyes. It is not expected that the face of poetry be etched with tears, the hair dripping with sweat, the mouth expressing all. Poetry owes nothing to anyone. Still, poetry wakes up each morning, walks to the edge of the world, and jumps, believing one time it will fly, believing one time the dive will not end, believing one time an answer will rise from somewhere beyond. I wasn't going to read, okay, here it is. I wasn't going to read this poem, but as I was reading and I guess my mind's recovering a little bit from COVID because it's already starting to do that thing where it swirls and sees associations. It reminded me that the school where I taught that workshop was also the place where I heard that Mary Oliver had died. And this was in 2019. But I remember I was sitting in the parking lot waiting to pick my daughter up from school when I heard it on NPR. And it just so happened that it was a gray winter day. It was in January and the trees were bare. And I had been staring at this beautiful tree silhouette against the sky. And when I heard the news, I immediately was saddened. She was one of my favorites and someone that I always taught to my students. But it seemed like I was looking at the perfect thing to hear that news about Mary Oliver. So I quickly wrote this poem down. And most, I'm sure you'll all know the allusion in the title, Wild and Precious. Seen at a distance this time of year when trees are silhouettes against a white sky, every shadow I think must be a bird I'd like to identify. Waxwings, falcon, the largest of them surely a beautiful hawk waiting to chase a careless squirrel across the yard and twice around the trunk of a pecan tree, rising on perfectly banked wings so close it could almost reach out and grasp the tuft of tail feather dancing behind. More often, it turns out to be mistletoe, nest, mere leftover leaves, but even these speak of life that was, that will soon enough return, and that truthfully always is. Mary Oliver, the woman I've introduced to more than 30 years of new students as one of our greatest living poets, died today. But in view of trees and birds and winter skies and everything that can be expressed in leaves, it is impossible to think of her as ever going away. And that also makes me think, hopefully you're all aware of the fact that Linda Paston passed away just a few days ago. And her poem, Death is Intended, which she wrote when she was 70 and she passed away at 90, has always been one of my favorites and another one that I teach to my students to get them thinking about that relationship that we have to what we believe. So I go back to what I had planned on reading, and if I can find the right one. This again, the COVID must be leaving me because the associations just start. So this was a poem that I wrote sitting by a railroad track in Blue Ridge, Georgia, waiting because again, I always arrive early to give a presentation at a writer's conference. And I didn't know it at the time because I wrote this poem years and years ago, but it became the title poem, Prepositional. And it does kind of go back to there's another poem in this book called 13 Ways of Prepositions, which of course is related to the whole series of 13 Ways poems that that are featured in Counting the Ways. This one was from Main Street Rag. But the other poem that I was talking about mentions an experience with a 7th grade teacher named Mr. Knudsen, who was not a bad guy all in all, but he had this thing about prepositions. He insisted that you could never use 2 prepositional phrases in a row. So of course I set about as my mission to prove that not only could it be done, but it could be done quite well. And this poem, I think, has 10 consecutive prepositional phrases. In fact, the entire poem is prepositional phrases, except for a little bit at the beginning and the end. So prepositional. I had not thought to see cedar waxwings and a greening tree along the tracks in downtown Blue Ridge, Georgia, with the sun rising from mountains behind them to the top of a clear blue sky on a warm morning in early April. But once placed so undeniably before me, how could I help but keep my eyes upon them and search for the words to help you see them too? Relationship to the world around us. Back to relationship with people. This is there are several love poems in this book. I think there are several love poems in each of my books. The one coming up with Chris Campbell, it's a love story. So the entire book is love poem after love poem. This one is dedicated to my wife. Refusing loss. She turns over in bed. Her hair gets in my mouth. It's not as bad as you might think. After lovemaking, few things are. And so my life has been since we first began together. I lean close and whisper into darkness. I'm sorry for every time I've come up short of being the man you wanted me to be. I take back every cross word I've uttered, every time I've said you were wrong or let anything matter more than you. Oh, fading familiar body beside me, I would give up everything to prolong what we have together. I would swallow each strand of this hair and more to purchase even one more minute like this one. And I did not notice exactly what time we started. I don't want to go over my allotted hour. So I have 4 more that I planned on reading. 2 from the book and then 2 new ones. And Malika, you'll just have to cut me off, okay, if I go too long. This is a poem. One thing that I love is when you have a poem that you kind of take for granted, and then you give a reading and someone comes up to you afterwards and they say, why didn't you read this one? That one's my favorite. And I had this happen 3 times with this poem. So now I've decided I'm just supposed to read this poem because everyone keeps telling me, or not everyone, obviously, but several people have really enjoyed it. So this is called Forward. My heroes are not those who survive the horrors of war any more than they who survive every day. Victors of interior battles, they hold their demons at bay, keep the gun in the drawer, knife on the table, pills in the bottle, continue to fight the good fight against daily injustice, uncertainty, decades of being degraded, told they don't matter, are less than, unworthy of love, opportunity, fairness. I love best those who get up in the morning, no matter how bleak the prospect of morning might be, who stand up for themselves or anyone else who needs it, who continually, convincingly, courageously push things forward. And I always say that this is probably my second favorite of my own poems. It's kind of my carpe diem, I guess, and it belongs in any discussion of relationship to what we believe. It's actually on the wall at the coffee shop, and because of that, I frequently have people who will, if I say that I'm tired or anything, they remind me of this poem and basically imply I'm not allowed to be tired. So this is used. I want to be used up by life, all resources expended, all reserves exhausted, thistle picked clean, river run dry. I want to work to the last minute at making and giving and take nothing with me. After my last breath, if there is anything left unused, I'll feel I failed and will only be saved by those who need what I have coming to carry it away. I'm gonna switch quickly and read at least one of these, if I'm still doing okay, Molly. Okay. These are very new ones. And I don't know, let's see. They haven't been around long enough for me to know how to introduce them, so I guess I'll just start. And if there's anything that needs to be explained, I can do it afterwards. This is Discoveries Made Late in Life. I went out today to discover something, anything, knowing the world still has plenty to show me. I noticed how certain lilies can spring 2 feet out of the ground and flower without a leaf or branch. And then a student who named herself after an insect and considers herself neither male nor female and attracted to both, joined me and pointed out in a nameless garden next to a building that was given a name, how bugleweed has the same dark beauty as certain ornamental grasses. I begin to imagine a world where time's not wasted on feeling ashamed of being black, gay, trans, male, female, uncertain. Where time's not wasted on hiding the facts of how you feel about who you are. Where time's not wasted on fearing that someone else might be different from you. I begin to imagine a world where there's so much more time for thinking, loving, making, sharing. I went out today to discover something. I had not thought to find anything in particular, but noticed, despite my years of living and looking, that so many things remain unexpected and probably will remain so until I look for them. Got time for one more? Yes, okay. All right, this one came about after doing something like this and having a friend, Linda Bell, share a poem from the reading with a friend of hers. And then that friend wrote to me, and this is the poem. It's called Friends for Carol and Glenda. My friend shares a poem of mine recorded for a podcast with a friend of hers. The friend of my friend writes me the warmest, most generous note of appreciation I've ever seen. A big and welcome surprise. Poets don't get much fan mail. She writes, lost my husband of near 69 years 2 years ago. Written very little since then. All sad. Then adds, just listening to your voice, reading your thoughts has made a difference in my life. Now I think I might begin writing again. Erasmus said, there is no joy in possession without sharing. And we're told the more we share, the more we have. In thinking of my friend and the friend of my friend, I begin to believe it. It all makes me want to share more. It all makes me want to be a friend of a friend. Cool. Thank you all.
Ooh, I love that. Thank you so much, Scott. Boy, you got some fan mail in the chat section, just to let you know. People, feel free to unmute. We can just take a moment to say, gosh, we have, everybody was writing the same thing. We have missed your voice. We have missed your voice.
Thank you so
and
much.
your presence and your poems. Did you want to say, Ronald? Ron, you put something in here that I really thought hit home. Let me see if I can find it.
I said a lot.
Lordy, have I missed this with, go ahead.
Well, the last one was, I don't think you can say any line, anything at all, Scott, without going deep and beauteous. I just think it's wired in for you. You know, and then I have one that tried to be funny. In your preposition one, I wrote, I think you screwed up, Scott. One of those was an infinitive phrase. But it had the word to in it. So, you know, the nuns taught us that it has to have an object to be a true preposition phrase, but I'll let you slide on that. And then, Lordy, have I missed this wisdom and gracefulness and powerful quietude washing over me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of us went. Yeah, that nailed it. You know, the powerful quietude. and the wisdom and gracefulness. Yep.
Mhm.
Thank you for putting words to that, Ron. Does anybody have any questions for Scott regarding like his process, the poems that we heard, this most recent book? The cover, I always like to ask about cover art.
That's a good question. So this is actually called the Tunnel of Love, and it's a place in the Ukraine, which I had found this image before the war in Ukraine started. And then, of course, once it started, I was even more committed to using it. I dread to think what it might look like now, but it's
Wow.
You know what it is, Scott? What, how it was used actually?
it is a railroad track, an unused railroad track, where the trees have simply overgrown in the shape of the train. And so it's this
Okay.
endless tunnel of green where everything is connected, and it plays right into the idea of relationships.
Oh, very cool.
Thank you, Scott. You know, I think in terms of like relational and how your mind kind of works like your poems, you are very associative and it starts bringing more and more things in. And I think that's a real gift that you have.
It can be a
with your
curse sometimes too. I mean, that's part of the reason that I don't sleep at night, because my mind won't stop and
keeps adding stuff in. What about this? And what about this? Yeah, and I thought about also that kind of, there was something about, I'm seeing if I can find it. The world still has something to show me. That's another like common theme of discovery that I love, that we get to go on that journey with you. And then Karen, you said the fabulous thing. You said, I'm so glad he's always early, because that seems to be when he gets a chance to write.
true. Very true.
Yeah, keep being early, Scott. Just keep doing that.
Well, my wife makes fun of me for being as early as I am, but I guess
Same with my husband. I'm early. I'm always early. I'd rather be there early.
Yeah, no, it gives you time to see.
Just
And-
kind of take
and-
it in. The
Yeah,
scenery,
see and feel.
feels, all that stuff. Yeah, just
Well, awesome. So, yeah, no, I love that you had written that, Karen. I wanted to make sure that I said something about that. Oh, and then you also said, just listening to your voice, reading your thoughts has made a difference in my life. Yeah, that resonated from the friend of a friend. Yeah, that was wonderful. Yes. Well, does anybody have any questions? I don't want to miss somebody. I didn't see any in the chat section.
Scott, I've got one. What are you working on now, Scott?
Well, the collaboration with Pris is at the press, so I'm hands off with that now. So I'm actively working on the collaboration with Joe Young, the photographer, the 2 collaborations. We're nearly finished with the first one, and then we get to work on the birds more. I have plenty of bird poems, and he's looking through his catalog to see what bird images he has to go with the poems that I've already written and to prompt new poems. So
I have what might be a weird question.
Yeah.
Do you ever do poetry stuff at your restaurant? And like, would it be cool if you carried like all your books like a little mini Scott Owens bookstore? You know, like
we have 9 or 10 of them. I'm afraid some have fallen out of print, and that's fine. But we have 9 or 10 of them there, and we do have monthly poetry readings.
oh, that's
called
awesome.
Yeah,
Could you have like poetry and poached eggs morning, or you could have
no, we
this
do
book
it in
with
the
this dish,
evening.
yeah.
Let's say I think we're in our 15th year, 16th year.
Wow, that's
It's been
great.
going on for some time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
where's the
fabulous
coffee shop
place
again?
to
If I ever get to North Carolina, I'll come.
Yeah.
Well,
Where
let me
is
know
the
when you're
coffee
coming,
shop,
and we can
Scott?
schedule you to read.
It's in Hickory. In Hickory.
Hickory. Oh, so that's close to where I live. So I might be
Well,
able to-
Donna, if you haven't been there, you got to make the trek.
Yeah.
I think Marie, you and I read there together.
yeah,
Did a workshop too.
cool.
Yeah, we kind of stopped the workshops with COVID, and I don't know that with the new arrangement, it wouldn't be easy to pull off the workshops, but we're still having readings on the second Tuesday of each month. And anyone who has a book coming out, if you'll send me a note, I don't know, let's see, what is my email address? asowens1@yahoo.com. If you just send me an email, I'll be glad to try to get you scheduled to be a featured reader.
Mm.
We're usually about scheduled 6 months out. So if your book's coming out in, August or September, now might be the perfect time to get on the list.
And I put it down asowens1@yahoo.com.
That's it, yeah.
That's what I thought. Also, to let everybody know, I put a link directly to the book at Redhawk Publications for Scott's book, Prepositional. So if you don't already have it, you can get it. Scott, are you signing them for people too? Could people reach out via your email and ask for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, they've done that. I was trying to remember if they've called me over to sign books before shipping before, and they have.
Okay.
I don't think we can do that. They are available through Amazon as well. I don't think Amazon's going to call me down to sign, but Redhawk will.
Okay. All right. Yes, Ron.
Scott, I've been pretty much exclusively writing short stories lately, but I always love to explore the relationships between poetry and short story. And I think if any creative art form in writing has to have poetry in it to be creative writing, I think. And I was just wondering if you I can't remember if you've written short stories or not, because I think you'd be just amazing at it.
I've written 4 short stories, and all 4 were published like instantly. So people said, "Oh, you should stick to the short stories," but I don't. It's just not the way I typically perceive things.
Right. Yeah, got
My
it.
experience of the world is usually as a poem, and just on occasion, it's like that's a story. I'm gonna keep that as a story. But just differences in the way we experience things.
Good answer.
Scott, can you talk about what your practice is for writing? Do you have a practice, or you just, when it hits you, you have to stop everything and make it a poem?
Early on, when I didn't have children and that sort of thing, I had a routine. I got up at 4 a.m. and I would write or read, usually both, for 2 hours before the rest of the world came in. And then once children appeared, that opportunity vanished. So I think it's fair to say of every writer, if you're going to keep writing, you've got to adapt to what your world allows. And just probably 2 years ago, I gave up the writer's notebook, and now I talk most of my beginnings into my phone and then later sit down and transcribe them.
Oh, wow.
But going between the college campus and the coffee shop and home, and still have a 17-year-old at home, there's just not a lot of time to sit down and write as the spirit strikes me. So I try to get it down in my phone as quickly as I can and go on with the rest of my day.
It's working. It's working for you.
I never thought it would. I used to, first day of class, I would hold up my notebook and say, step 1, get one of these, get a nice one, make it something that you love, make it something you want to spend time with. And now I still bring it in and I say, you might try this, or you might try this, whichever works for you. So gotta adapt.
Yeah. Yep. Reminds me of Lucille Clifton responding to someone who said, why are your poems so short? And she said, my kids are young. And Regina, I saw you shaking your head when he was talking about talking it into his phone. That's similar. Awesome.
You just have to capture. I do everything in my phone. I talk to it, talk it into my voice recorder, or I'll just in bed, like between waking and sleeping, just type on my phone, just so I won't lose it,
Yeah, I do. I send myself like an email draft with like the scaffolding of the poem, and then I just finish it later.
Yeah.
That's neat to hear people's process. Yeah, jump in, Ron.
So Scott, we live in a part of the country where there's a lot of kind of religious sensibility that comes into poetry, regardless of how it's offered. And then there are areas, that are a little more noted intellectual kind of framework than others, like New York or things like that. But I always respond best to poems that kind of don't separate the mind and the heart and the soul and the body. It all comes together. And I feel the physicality in your poetry really strongly. It's poetry of the body in addition, to everything else. There's feeling and heart, and there's ideas in it, but I can't separate those out. It's a full body experience and a full being experience.
Mhm.
So you just wondered if you're aware of that, or something you think about, or what.
It's, well, first off, I think that's probably the most flattering thing anyone has ever said about any of my writing. And it's something that I do talk about with my students, that there is what you're trying to do when you write a poem is to recreate an experience. And an experience isn't just intellectual, or isn't just physical, isn't just emotional. It's a gestalt, and you have to be aware of that, the whole thing, and try to get it down in a way that conveys that same experience to the reader. And that's not easily done. But that's the goal.
Yay. No, I like that. Another good insight, Ron, is that there is that gestalt. I think that was the perfect word for that.
Yeah, it's a good word for it.
So if y'all want to take a moment just again to say, Scott, thank you so much. It was so good to be in your good company. And I'm
wonderful.
glad
Oh,
you're
goodness.
feeling better.
Thank you, Scott.
Oh,
Thank you.
Scott,
Scott.
so
That's great.
fabulous.
I got to hear you read for the first time, so that was very cool for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Connie. I'm so glad you were here. I'm going to start coming to people for open mic. Just a reminder, if for any reason you did not want me to tape, just let me know and I will pause it. Gary, I'm coming to you first. I'll make you the spotlight.
Hi, everybody. This poem has a title that's a word that I grew up with on a peach farm in Central California. My sons, who did not grow up on a peach farm in Central California, think the word is corny and hilarious, so I decided to use it as the title. And this is also a poem for my father. Gully washer. I heard at any time the rivers rose, the levees broke, the orchard contorted into Bunyan's slough of despond. Yep, that is a real gully washer. Any 4 in the morning from election day to April Fools, I could figure to be stirred from my flannel sheets to see my father's face tell me, grab a shovel, follow him to the fields, dig fast and strong as I could, shore up, follow the lead edge of your last shovelful. And I would, because it mattered to him and was mattering to me, till the levee held fast against the surge and I'd slog back to bed, or brace my back against our rural route mailbox, wait for the diesel bluster of our school bus as it wallowed through puddles and road ponds left by the drench. I'd watch it plow the length of our road, cowcatch cataracts of froth and sludge into our neighbors' fields. When it slowed enough for the waves to ebb into ripples, I'd board, expecting to be bored by recess, the flood of noise and baloney at lunch, the absurdities of new math. Some crumbs of luster, a poem in our basal readers, a song from the state-approved American singer against the gully wash of grade school ennui. Capote called it a sky that stops, that sensible horizon of others' fear of more than this. This morning, my qualms of what comes next have receded, cleared enough to become mysteries. Forecasts augur cold and dry. Skies are boundless as I listen deep for that farmer's voice. Shore up, shore up. Thank you.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much, Gary. Please check the chat section. Yeah, so so many people were writing
Alfie.
stuff down. That was fabulous. And also really relating to my reality right now as someone who has horses on a farm and, a wee bit of mud. I'm coming to you, Connie, next, because I know you're on, let's see. There we go.
Wait. All right, I'm going to read one that just came out in this magazine called Interlit Q, International Quarterly. It's called November Stroll. An evening walk with my grandson. He asked me questions about leaves, their orange and red shades. He wants to know why they fall off the trees. I tell him we can look it up when we get home. I accidentally step on a small stone and almost falter and wonder how I made it this far, now with a cane in one hand and a small satchel at my hip. I feel like I've always been a grandparent, always had someone older walking quietly next to me, answering questions about the moon, telling me how to stay safe, telling me how long to stay in the closet in my room, telling me if I'm quiet enough, someday I will escape, promising me that one day no one will put their hands around my neck ever again. I've held that child, invisible though she was, until she could finally walk in the cadence of my shifting bones with her unbraided hair, her unclenched hand.
Oh, Connie. Too powerful. Yeah, if I'm quiet enough, that's just really one of those ones that I remember seeing earlier. And it's lovely to hear you read it. I hadn't heard that.
Thank you.
Christy, I'm coming to you next.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I couldn't decide what I wanted to read tonight, but when Scott mentioned that he's asked to read certain poems all the time, I pulled this one out because every time I read from Finding Her, people ask me to read Yoga Pants. So we're going to do that tonight. Yoga Pants. Shopping at Target, I see them and smile. Remember wearing a similar pair, sister yogas. These are heathered gray. A teal roll down band provides a backdrop for silvered leopard spots. Remembering my legs, strong and shapely, used to plant my feet, raise my bottom, bridge all my strength. My sister yogas assisted that derriere move, squeezing tight, lifting body parts into perfect poses. My abs, never carved, but always flat, stood at attention, saluting the colored swath that kissed my belly button and nuzzled its bejeweled ring. I have to try these on. Snatching them off the rack, I glide into the fitting room. Just outside my stall door, a full-length mirror waits. My eyes alight with hope as they adjust to the reflection. A fellow shopper smiles behind me. Oh, you precious thing. Those yoga pants hug your love bundle. And just like that, my belly button's unintentional smile opened wide the veil, swaddling my all too unrealistic fantasy, lost somewhere between not pregnant and not even almost flat. Thanks, y'all.
It's really one.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, I know why people ask for that one. Yeah, I climbed into the fitting room. All right. Donna, let me find you. Give me a second.
Okay.
There you go. Thanks for saying so, because suddenly it lights up on my thing. I'm like, oh, there you are.
Okay. Lifelines is the title of this poem. It was the fingerprints that gave it away. A routine background check and the officer couldn't get good prints, nothing but a lineup of smudges. So I began to study my hands, those scars against the lifeline, some unknown event crowding each shallow groove, like words so close they interrupt each other. So one day, playing cards with my mother, I asked how my fingerprints became indistinct as fog, and she began her story of an unsteady toddler falling on a red-hot furnace, that long, weeping taxi ride to the hospital, weeks trying to care for two hands wrapped in sterile mitts. The relief she felt when one afternoon, a gauzy glove offered her 12 watermelon seeds, like a dozen tiny miracles, she said. And finally, I realized my life was always in her hands.
Donna, that is fabulous. Thank you.
Mhm.
This is why I loved our open mic. Ron, I'm coming to you.
Okay, I got two really tiny ones, minimalist. Can I read two?
Yes.
Okay. The first one is about as big a scale as you can get, and the second one is the opposite. It's small scale and kind of intimate. So if I can find got a new computer and it's organized. So the first one is like a galaxy. Wherever you go, you pour your starry self like a galaxy into an empty pocket. The surrounding space applauds your arrival. The quantum foam giggles like a busload of school kids out to the edge of the cosmos in all directions. You're hailed a hero, and the void wraps a grateful arm around your shoulder. And then the second one, I'm looking out my window right now at a peach tree that for the first couple of years when it was small, it gave good peaches, and now it's they all fall off or get eaten by squirrels. So every year, anyway, it had its day. First backyard peach. My daughter and I, hip to hip over the sink, nectar raining wild. We dig down to the fruit-bearing heart, smack our lips, and for one smile, we're no longer a failed family. The three of us, back at the center of things, the future running sweet. Thank you.
Just Ron, check the chat section. Yeah, I love what Karen wrote. She said, you pour your starry self like a galaxy into an empty pocket. She said, you had me right there. That's from Karen. Yeah, the future running sweet was gorgeous. Regina, I'm looking for you and I see you. There you are.
Hello, everybody. Today, can you hear me? Okay. Today, my grandmother would have been 101 years old. She passed away several years ago. She was 86 years old. She died walking. That's what, we like to say. She was in rehab and she was strong like that. We were very close, and she would tell me stories about how she grew up and about what life was like. And so in her memory, in her honor, this poem is for her. It's not necessarily all about her, but pieces of the women in my family. Hashtag grandmothers matter. Black blues gone, pulled from collective memory. On cold mornings, my grandmother would light the stove with fire and dry kindling to warm the house and our stomachs. She would heat sweet potatoes still in their rough papery skin from the night before. One day I rose earlier than usual and saw her walking, outside of my brown bag sealed window. Tattered coat collar pulled around her ears, woolen socks pulled over her hands as she bent and reached toward the woodpile. I saw the grimace and wince replace the soft brown gentleness of her face. This was the first time I had seen her as anything but God. Poor and black we were, but she never allowed us to feel the sting of the pain of this existence, nor experience the skewed culture often birthed from abject poverty and exclusion. She was our savior, and we resided in her courts, covered by her care until such time as our skin toughened to the world. Her garden bloomed as if it knew her and loved her touch, her talk, her tenderness. It lifted up offerings of fresh vegetables, enough for her to can for long winter months, and sprouted lush herbs for healing balms. She fed and treated all she knew who needed her care. She fought through pain to create a path for promise. The blue of blackness in this cruel South would not deter her resolve to tend her people in her garden of hope.
Oh, that is gorgeous. Yep, her garden bloomed as if it knew her. Yeah, that is gorgeous. I love also the texture descriptions, Regina. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Karen, you are our final reader. Coming to you.
I can't be the final. I can't be the final. That's not right.
It's
Can you
the
hear me?
perfect one to end on. You're a cornerstone here.
I don't know. All right, I got some fresh ink for you, though. An odd little thing from this morning. A winter morning wonder. I've never been a young boy hoeing a field in Nebraska, among other young boys hoeing among corn husks, but I have felt the wonder and joy of running as one inside the funneling spin of a dust devil 40 or 50 feet high, feeling like the genie rising up as the swirl of smoke escaping the uncorked bottle, able to grant 100,000 wishes, all because of Ted's February 4 clear and windy poem.
Karen, that's wonderful.
Ted
the genie
Kooser,
rounds it up.
Ted Kooser, he's my hero.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love him.
that's wonderful. Well, once again, thank y'all for making an amazing Thursday evening tonight. And Scott, thank you for letting us celebrate with you. It's just lovely to be in your good company again.
And Malika, people come to your
everybody
reading.
be
You're
well.
an amazing host, so
Oh,
they
thank
all
you.
love you. You create a really wonderful and welcoming and warm environment. So that's a really important reason people come so often. So
Oh, thank you for saying that,
Connie,
Connie.
can I just
And,
say
you know,
this?
that's how I met
It's
Connie.
true.
Is
Right.
I know.
Connie, this is the first time I've been in the room with you. But we
Oh,
talk
really?
on Facebook
That's right,
all
'cause
the
we
time. I don't think
WNP,
we've been in a
we
whole.
haven't- yeah. So it's
Yeah,
like-
you're my WNP.
Hey, buddy. That's
partner.
right.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to be in the same room.
buddies.
Yeah.
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 Oh, I'm surprised. I didn't realize you two hadn't, connected in, I was
No,
about to say in
it's not-
person.
I felt like we kind of had, because we've listened to each other, but not in the live in the same room. So
You know, I want to go kidnap those babies. I love your
Yeah.
friend.
they keep me very, very busy.
Yes.
Yeah, I met Connie
Oh,
on
yeah.
one of these calls. She read, and I was so impressed with her poetry that somebody said, "Oh, well, you ought to get in touch with her." Now we've become
That's
virtual
right.
friends.
But that's why I love coming. I always feel like my North Carolina family. I'm telling you, I think I had another life.
I
I
was
mean,
gonna
there are
say you have
all
to
across
take
the
it.
nation, most of my poetry friends that from the East Coast are
Yeah.
in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, we're claiming you. I'm sorry. We are.
Adopt me. And I'm next
We
week,
love you
aren't I?
here, Connie.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
be doing next week, I think. Am I next week, February 9th? Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I believe so. I mean, yep. So next week we celebrate with Connie. So come on back.
Yay.
Yay. All right, guys. Be well, Scott.
You're good.
Continue your
Thank
healing.
you, Scott. That was amazing. It was beautiful
Wonderful.
reading.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it-
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
I had heard of Scott, but I'd never heard him read. I've heard other poets
In the flesh now.
mention him,
Oh.
so this was just wonderful.
When, and
Donna,
now you have a
get
whole
all of the
other poet
books.
to
I
seek
know, I
out
think
for-
I will. You know, my budget. It's
Get
gloomy.
all of his
Oh.
books, all of his books, all of
understand.
Scott's books.
Yeah.
Get them all.
All
I
right,
just
you guys.
realized-
See you
I
next
just-
time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
We could have
You
a
read the-
little, one of those little libraries, a little free
I
library.
know.
Just have Scott's books.
Yeah.
Don't read Scott's too many at once because your cerebral cortex will explode.
Yeah.
There's too
Come
much
on,
wisdom
when do you
in
go
there.
to Ireland?
Oh, it's not until 2024. They're
Oh,
booked through
okay, good. So we have you
2023.
here. Good.
Yeah, I'm here for a while. And it'll take me that
Congratulations.
long to work myself into actually being away from my farm. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I do.
Well,
look forward
it was
to
good to meet your cat.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
And he's gone now. I don't know
Right.
why he's felt the need to come say hi to everybody.
Right.
And he usually doesn't come in here. He's really my daughter's cat.
Oh, yeah.
I have a little gray kitty, but he's very shy. Actually, all he does is sleep. So he's just sleeping to the right. So that's why he sleep through anything.
Scott, I have to
Time to go
apologize.
throw hay in the mud.
Right.
Be
Scott, I have to
welcome.
apologize to you because
Yeah.
I forgot to change my name on the Zoom.
I
was
knew it was you though.
Garcia.
There was
Huh?
some way I knew it was you, and I can't remember, but I knew who it was. We
Well,
did
you know,
have a
I'm gonna let Regina in. I let her in. I'll always let her in.
We've been very fortunate that most people will adhere to first and last name.
I forgot.
But occasionally you have someone that you just say, I'm sorry, you can't come in. It's a fair deal.
You're right.
That would be the bathtub man, right? Or
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to not see that. I was so grateful that for whatever reasons I had it on the little tiles. Oh, Scott, we're talking about one of our Zoom bombers. Actually, there was just two that have ever happened, and bathtub guy was definitely unique.
He was actually in the bathtub?
Oh,
Yeah.
truly, yeah,
Oh my
I can't
God.
believe I
rubber
missed
duck
that
and
one.
everything.
I think I've probably been, I won't even say what happened, but it was probably the worst. I've never heard anybody say they have been in one like I've been in one. I was in one. I almost had
Oh
to
my God.
it was horrible. The
Yeah,
only
I
thing that
have.
could have been worse was somebody killing somebody.
Oh
Oh
my
my
God,
God.
I'm so
That's how
sorry,
bad it was.
Regina. And I have deep concern about that.